the Andrew Lake Podcast.
Now in collaboration with Acid Quote Tees.
Feel the rhythm and turn on the all connected.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, USA. What a beautiful day it is once again. Do I have to think of a different intro every single time? I don't think so. Let me just let it be how it wants to be. Once you're in on the joke, don't tell anyone else. What a beautiful day it is. What a time to be alive. You know, even when it's cloudy, even when it's raining, for me that's still beautiful. It's not about the weather. How beautiful and how amazing this life is not about the weather. I think when I come on here and I say, wow, it's amazing, it's so beautiful and all these big things and I love putting out this big energy, people might think, well, what if it's not sunny where you are? Well, I can still feel excited. I mean, it's not really that sunny where I am today, but it's still a beautiful day. Once you're in on the joke, don't tell anyone else. This is our acid quote of the day. I did also want to mention that we're shipping to all 50 states by Acid Quote Tees. There will be a link in the description somewhere where you can get this very said quote along with the quote of each of the episodes that we are doing. And I'm hoping you're well, having your beautiful times. I was also thinking these tees, they're printed in America and they're shipping to America, like it's made in America. So is it called shipping? Because it doesn't really go on a ship. I imagine they actually a delivery van or a truck or something like that, right? It's actually by road if you're ordering in the US of A. Now, if you're ordering around the world, then it would be shipping, but anyway, I don't know about the logistics. All I know is the quotes that we put on these tees. And this is, for today, the acid quote of the day. Once you're in on the joke, don't tell anyone else. This is that moment where it's like an in-joke, but it's the unspoken joke. It's an in-joke that is just known. And this is where you meet someone and you sort of look at them, you sort of wink, you sort of just play in a way that is without words. And then something happens. There's this moment of rapport where you get it and you sort of giggle at each other, right? Have you ever had this at school where you're just like looking across the classroom? I mean, it happens with kids a lot more because kids are more playful, but you can have it at any time of life where you just you're just in on it and you just have this like cozy little cute thing with someone and it's like you can't say what it is and that's why you can't tell anyone about it, right? And of course this does also happen if you know the joke of life, right? This is the joke of how everything is absurd, everything is just so funny, and if you look at something that's in just day-to-day life, it can remind you of that, right? Like just like looking at someone wearing a funny outfit, you can laugh and just be like, that's so weird, that person looks so weird, and yet you can't say that, right? Because they're just a normal person in a way. So, yeah, and I mean, jokes are funny anyway. Like jokes are cute little stories that you can share even if it's not an unspoken joke or a sort of hidden rapport like that, you can still have I'm up for a good laugh. I'm up for a good story. I've got a couple in my little bag of tricks. I've got a few favorites from over the years. A lot of mine are Osho jokes. I mean, I've heard a lot of Osho jokes. Some of them are quite offensive. I don't know if I can repeat them here. And I mean, I know now there's a culture of trying to make the most offensive joke. And I mean, the sad thing about that is some of them aren't actually that funny or interesting. They're sort of trying to be brutal and offensive for the sake of being brutal and offensive and getting a shock value rather than an insight or to make you laugh or something like that. But that's a different story. We don't have to go down that road. That's a bit of a bummer. So let me try and think of one. There's all these ones about little Albert that Osho tells. Like he's got this character, little Albert. Like one day his parents, little Albert's parents, I mean, they're trying to work something out with Albert. So his dad comes in, but this is before Albert gets home from school. His dad comes in and puts on the living room table a $50 note, a Bible, and a bottle of rum or a bottle of whiskey, some hard liquor, something like that. And then he goes to his wife, hey, let's hide behind here and see what happens when little Albert gets home. And she goes like, what do you mean? What's going on here? What's the idea? And he goes, well, if he comes home and he takes the $50 note, he's going to be a banker. If he comes home and he takes the Bible, he's going to be a preacher. And if he comes home and he drinks the rum, he's going to be a drunk. So little Albert comes home and his parents are hiding behind the couch, and the first thing he sees is the $50 note. And he picks it up, gives it a smell, and puts it straight in his pocket. But before walking off, he sees the Bible. He picks it up, dusts it off, and hoists it under his arm. And then the last thing he sees, of course, is the bottle of whiskey, which he opens up and takes a big gulp out of, wipes his mouth, puts the lid back on, and hoists it under his other arm before walking off. And then his mum goes, my goodness, what does this mean? And little Albert's dad goes, oh dear, this means he's going to be a politician. So that's one story about little Albert. I mean, there was another funny story about little Albert that I'll try and remember. I mean, Osho had a lot of these. He had a lot of these stories as well. Like, there's this one where Osho's on a train and a politician comes in and sits across from him. And it's in like the same cabin, right? It's a long-term train or something like that. And Osho says, well, he knew he was a politician immediately because he stinks. He stank. And, of course, we all know that all politicians stink. So Osho talks to him. He says, hey, would you like to hear a joke about a politician? And the politician says, yes, I would like to hear a joke, but I must warn you, I am a politician myself. To which Osho replies, don't worry, I will tell it to you very, very slowly. So that's another funny, cute story about Osho riding trains and telling his jokes. And I mean, a lot of those Osho stories, they're so outrageous that you sort of wonder, like, are they real? Like in this case, I mean, the politician one, that's just a joke. That's just a story. That doesn't really matter if it's real or not. But I mean, the other stories about Osho, like there's this one where he's at school and the teachers are forcing him to write with his right hand. And he's actually left-handed, like he actually senses for himself that he's left-handed. And it's funny that even as a kid, he could sense and know himself well enough to know that he was left-handed without any sort of guidance. So even in that, it's quite something. But what actually happened was Osho turned it into this big drama. It was this big controversy. And he said to the teacher, why must I write with my right hand? Why is this better? And, you know, the teacher was trying to force him, and he said, okay, you'll have to go to the principal. And then Osho says, okay, send me to the principal. And then he goes to the principal, and he goes into his office, and he says, I want written proof that it's better to write with your right hand than your left hand. And there were all these other, you know, teachers involved, and his parent, you know, his father came in, and it was this huge thing. And it was just like, damn, what kind of kid was this? What kind of kid would, like, know himself that much, be confident in himself that much, and be strong enough to stand up to the parents in his life and the adults in his life that much? It was just like, wow. And then there was another one where Osho wanted to go to, like, a festival or a event or something, and he knew that his parents wouldn't let him. So what he did is he went anyway without telling them. And he was actually there. It was like this huge festival. And he was actually there for, like, you know, 4 or 5 days. Completely like they had no idea where he was. He was like a missing child sort of situation, right? And anyway, at the end of the festival, when it was over, he came back and he said to his parents, he said to his dad, look, I know what I did was wrong, but you must know that if I had have asked you, you would not have let me. And even if you would have not have let me, I was going to go to that festival anyway. So I had no choice in it. And it was sort of like I think he ended up still getting in trouble from his dad. But, you know, by a certain age, I think what happened with Osho and his dad, it was like, I think he described it like his dad would be in his office and there would be a line of people lining up to talk to him about Osho, right? About the bad stuff he's done, about the mischief that he's got into and the problems that he's caused, right? And I think probably the most insane story of this, like the most outrageous story, was where Osho cut off a guy's choti. So in Indian culture and Eastern cultures around the world, some men grow chotis, which is this small patch on the back of your head of hair, which you don't cut. So you shave your head, but you leave that patch. That's just that one square little thing. And because it's never been shaved, right, you can go your whole life, some of these men that do this, without shaving it. And because of that, it's very long. It's this huge long tail, and some of them wind it up and they keep it in a certain way. And there's also like religious beliefs around this, or religious, what would you say? It's like, sort of like a spiritual practice. And keeping it, like there was this guy that, like, what was the story? I'm just trying to remember now. So anyway, there's this guy that has this choti, and Osho talks to him about, like, why does he do it? And he, like, questions him, and he sort of undermines his belief, and he says that it's stupid, and he says you don't even need it, and you should cut it off, and he sort of has a go at him, like Osho digs at him, right? And anyway, the guy goes to sleep, and Osho sneaks up on him and actually chops it off, right, in his sleep without him knowing. And there's this whole thing of, like, you know, how it comes out, and the guy first pretends that it didn't happen, but then Osho says, you know, oh, this has been chopped off, and he actually exposes him. And then they, of course, work out that Osho did chop it off, and then he does... then he takes him to his father, and the thing was that Osho was there with his father, with this guy who's had his choti chopped off, and the guy knows that Osho's done it, and he's trying to get his father to get him in trouble. And Osho says, okay, before I answer, did I chop this guy's choddy off or not, you should promise to me that if I tell the truth, I will be rewarded. And Osho forces his dad to agree to that if he tells the truth, he should be rewarded, no matter what the truth is. And anyway, he somehow gets his dad to agree to this. And of course, then Osho does tell the truth. And the truth is that actually he did chop it off. And of course, then his father had to pay him and reward him. And this was in front of the guy that had his choddy chopped off. Right? So these sort of stories, I mean, they're just so outrageous and so unbelievable. And I remember when I was at the resort, at Osho International Meditation Resort, and I had sort of known these stories, and I had heard a lot of stories in his discourses and things. And I'd also read that book, Glimpses of a Golden Childhood. There's many stories in that, many wild stories in that about Osho and his mischief. Unbelievable stuff. Anyway, I knew a lot of stories, and I was walking around, and I actually met Osho's brother. So one of Osho's brother, I think he had like 11 or 12 siblings or something. Anyway, his brother was a common guy there. I'd seen him around a lot. And one day I walked up to him, and I just straight out asked him, like, are these stories about Osho true? Like, is this real? And he looked at me and he's like, yeah, it's all true. And I was like, well, how do you know? How does everyone know? And he's like, well, you know, so many people knew him, and he had many sannyasins that were his followers, and these stories exist in his family life and his community life, and it's just like, okay, I believed him. And I mean, he's Osho's brother, so he knew. So, yeah, I mean, the reason we have so many books on Osho and how he told so many stories is just because he was that guy that flew higher than everyone else, right? He was more outrageous, more controversial, more assertive of himself, more strong within himself, like us common peasants, us mere mortals. And I mean, I guess we shouldn't say that we're just mere mortals, because you and me, we are of the same consciousness, right? We are of the same fabric. We are of this same life. We do, each of us, have our own sovereignty, and it manifests in different ways. It doesn't have to be in controversy. It doesn't mean that just because you're in a higher way of being, you're going to cause trouble, right? Not necessarily. It is possible to live in a higher way and live a quiet life. And I mean, by all regards, it looked like Osho was destined to be a controversy, as he turned out to be in many different ways. And really, the controversies of his childhood were just the beginning. Like, look at the stuff that actually happened to him. That's a whole nother story. I mean, we'll be telling stories for years about these sort of events, right? We're still telling stories about them now, and we will be. But really, we are of the same consciousness. We are of the same fabric. And when we hear these stories about Osho and we hear these jokes, we remember that. When we laugh at a joke, we remember the cosmic absurdity. A joke is just a small reminder that this universe is a joke. Why was the shopping trolley in the hotel lobby? Because someone went shopping. Alright, that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you're having a beautiful day. Do you love this outro music, this theme music? I just love this music. This song I could listen to all day, every day. Andrew Lake Podcast, Acid Quotees. Have a beautiful day. We'll be back very soon with more. See ya!